This year again went by so fast. As most people, I'm already in holiday mood and I can't wait to just take some time off from work and just chill. But before I do that, at the end of the year, I always feel that there's one important thing that I really need to do, which is to ask myself, how did I feel about this year? How did this year go? Overall, it went pretty well. I mean, I didn't achieve all my goals, but actually I've achieved a pretty high percentage of my goals. About 80%, I would say. Some things I didn't get as far with, but on the other hand, with some other goals, I actually achieved much more than I expected. For example, with my other YouTube channel, I actually exceeded my income target by about 30%. So all in all, for me, it was a pretty good year. But it wasn't always like this. Previously, there were years where I would just achieve 50%, about half of all my goals, and perhaps a decade or so ago, I would even only achieve 10 or 20% of my goals and feel pretty shitty at the end of the year. So what changed in my approach? There's one really important thing that I do at the end of each year that helps me to build momentum for the next year. Something I've done for the last 5 years or more is a year-end review. So I wanted to set up a system where I could recognize my own successes, but also failures and also repetitive mistakes that I made, so that next year I could just repeat what had already worked and avoid what didn't. I crystallized all of this into one single sheet, which looks like this. So this Christmas, I want to give you this review sheet, which you can download from my website, and I will leave the link down in the descriptions below. It will be available to you to download for free until January. This review sheet is actually part of a larger, more comprehensive planning and reviewing method. So if you're interested to find out more about that, then you can also pick up my book, Multiple Careers, Quit the Rat Race, Pursue Fulfilling Work. But now let's get back to the year-end review. So this is how it works. On this sheet, you will see different areas of life, including family, career, jobs. So I differentiate between career and jobs, learning, hobbies and leisure, and then finance. And then there's one empty row that you can use for other areas of your life that you want to add. On the horizontal axis, you will see the months of the year. So ideally, you would review your year for each month of the past year. But that is optional. If you do not want to do that, then you can just write down your findings in the last column, which says results. But the reason why I like to do it month by month is that it kind of gives me a sense of how well I spent my time. So when I look at it, I can see, okay, this is how much time I spent working on my book, for example. This is when I started writing my story. This is when I hit my income target, and so on. And don't worry, you don't need to be too exact about it. The idea is just to give you a better overview of how your previous year went month by month. So now what do you actually write into each of these cells? The first thing to write down, either for the whole year in summary or for each month, are your successes and highlights. So these are all the things that you achieved, that went well, that made you proud of yourself or simply fulfilled. For example, for me, that was that during the past year, I was really consistent in uploading to YouTube. I'm really happy with myself that I kept at it. I continued to upload consistently, and my revenue was not only up, but I even exceeded 30% of my goal. So that's the good news. For each month, or in summary for the whole year, you want to note down everything that you achieved, that went well, and that you're proud about. And trust me, once you do it, it will feel very satisfying. And when you're done with everything and you look back at your sheet and you glance at all of your achievements all at once, you will feel very positive about this year. You will feel glad and have a kind of a positive closure for this year. But now let's also talk about the negatives. Take some time to also write down your failures and your blind spots. That could be month by month or a summary for the whole year. So these includes things like goals you didn't achieve and also mistakes that you did. And most importantly, try and identify your personal weaknesses, your blind spots that actually led to you making all of these mistakes. Because very frequently in life, when you make some mistake, when you encounter some failure, that is usually the result of those one or two same weaknesses that you've just ignored. And remember, you're doing this not in the spirit of putting yourself down or discouraging yourself. On the contrary, At this point, you're like a car mechanic who is trying to find out what the exact problem is, why the car is not running or performing as it should. And once you find that point, that problem point, and you fix it, then everything will be much easier and much better in the coming year. So for me, it was not getting ahead as much as I wanted with my story. And the problem was that, as usual, as I've often done in the past, I've again underestimated the time that it took. Usually I would always plan to write a bit on the weekends, a bit on Saturday and on Sunday. And I'm actually proud of myself that I managed to do it. I actually worked on Saturdays and Sundays. The problem was just that I didn't work as many hours and I didn't get ahead as fast as I wanted to. So this is sort of a blind spot that I have, and I know that many people have this, which is to underestimate the effort and the time that it takes to actually complete something. Based on this small setback, I know that next year I've got to do things differently. Instead of solely relying on weekends to get the writing done, I also have to carve out some time during the regular work week. And how can I do that? Most likely I will need to create some space and time during the week by spending less time on less important tasks. So you can do it month by month, and for each month note down your successes and highlights and your failures and blind spots. On the other hand, you can also use the backside if there's not enough space. So if you did it month by month, then in the end, in the last column, you can summarize the highlights of the highlights. So what were your biggest successes in each of these areas, and what were your biggest failures or mistakes or blind spots in each of these areas? And after you're finished, the last column, this will be the gist of what worked well versus what you'll need to improve. And you know, I find this exercise really fun, and at the end of each year, I'm really looking forward to it. This reviewing routine is kind of cathartic. By doing this, you can sort of purge all the negative or even ambiguous feelings about the year. You no longer ask yourself, was it a good year? Was it a failure? Or was it perhaps much better than I give myself credit for? By filling out this sheet, you take stock of your year objectively. You take an honest look at how it went, and you're able to learn from your weaknesses and mistakes. But on the other hand, you'll also be able to congratulate yourself for and celebrate all the awesome things that you've achieved. One of the things that I've learned from doing this year-end review is that I need to be much better at goal setting. This year, I believe I've already improved a lot in goal setting, and that is also why I've managed to achieve about 80% of my goals. But like I said before, there were things that I just didn't get to because I didn't make them my priority. So this is the takeaway for myself for this year. I really need to take the time to think about what I really want to achieve next year, what is really important to me, so that I can prioritize that, achieve that next year, and feel satisfied with my year at the end of the year. So this is something that you might have frequently heard, which is don't stay stuck in the past. And I completely agree. You should never stay stuck in the past, but you should also not completely forget your past either, or else you'll risk making the same mistakes over and over again. Because to succeed in the future, you must learn from the past. Or as Carl Sagan said, you have to know the past to understand the present.